Arigato Gamera. Hello, my name is Will, and this is Exploding Helicopter, the podcast with strangely curved upward incisors. Success breeds imitation, so when Toho started coining it in with a string of Godzilla sequels, rival film producers Dai Studios decided to get themselves a slice of the kaiju movie boom, with a monster of their own, Gamera. The series' star, a giant prehistoric turtle that could breathe fire and fly, was first introduced to audiences in 1965. Since then, the hero in a half shell has gone on to star in no fewer than 12 movies. On this show, we're taking a look at the third entry in the giant turtle series, Gamera vs. Gyaos. To help me review the film, I'm joined by a man who loves nothing more than watching two men in rubber suits wrestling with each other. It's my good friend, Fred Andersson. Welcome back to the show, buddy.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Will. Yeah, I'm very happy to be back here talking about the giant turtle of Japan. So thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it's good to have you here because I know you are, a massive fan of kaiju movies, and I'm well aware of your love of Godzilla. But what I'm not so sure about is your relationship to the Gamera series, which obviously was designed as a rival to the Big G. So yeah, where do you stand with the Gamera films?
Well, it's a complex situation, I must say. I mean, of course, as the kaiju fan I own every Gamera movie made. Of course, I have them in my shelves. But here's the thing: the first time I ever saw Gamera was in a movie called Gamera Super Monsters, and it's kind of like a best of movie from 1980. If you remember that one, it's like have some super ladies in it, some kind of superheroes or something, and it's kind of monster fights from every movie. And in that movie, I don't remember where the original scene is from, there is a sequence where Gamera is stomping around and he walks past a Godzilla sign, like some kind of Godzilla poster or something, and when he stomps quite close to it, it falls down. And I felt very, very offended because it felt like, I mean, here they are introducing a new monster, and they dare to humiliate Godzilla. I don't know if you've seen this scene, but it's soul crushing to see. So I didn't have a good start with Gamera, really, and it has always been complicated ever since. For years, I often said that the Gamera was best for some kind of turtle soup or something like that, so offending other fans.
It's very cruel.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, I know. But with that said, I've learned to appreciate Gamera a lot more as I've gotten older, of course. I feel that Gamera and the movies themselves are inferior to the Godzilla movies, of course, and probably to most other kaiju movies from Japan. So yeah, it's harsh words, but I still like Gamera. I do. I promise.
Yes, I have seen that film that you mentioned where that shocking scene takes place. I don't remember that moment. I want to go back and watch it. But it is a bit cheeky to say the least for Gamera to be dissing Godzilla, which Gamera is obviously a very cynical rip-off of Godzilla, so that seems a real liberty to be dissing the inspiration for the entire character in that way. But it kind of reminds me of those sort of needless rivalries that American rappers like to get into, where they have beef with somebody else from some other rapper from the East Coast or something, and they and it's a shame that Godzilla never did a sort of something similar as a little bit of payback in the next film, and they could have had a little ongoing beef in their kind of subsequent films where they subtle little put downs.
I think Toho is way they have way too much.
They're too classy.
They're too classy. Yeah, they wouldn't do such a thing, really. Except in one of the newer Godzilla movies, what's the name of it now? Where Godzilla is beating the hell out of the American Godzilla. The American, the American Roland Emmerich Godzilla is making a little cameo, and Rubber Godzilla is basically beating the crap out of it for a very, very short scene. That's basically the only time I've seen Toho make a statement.
There have been a few sort of ideas about actually bringing Godzilla and Gamera together in the same movie. Is that something you would like to see, or do you think that's a bit like, those are two streams that should never cross?
No, that would be fun. I think, as long as Gamera loses, But I guess they will, shape the story so those two monsters are fighting, a third monster or other monsters in general, and they would go the cowardly route because I guess neither of the companies would allow their monster to lose.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would definitely be a team up movie. We might get one dust up between them sort of earlier on in the film, but yes, I almost certain that they would end up having to join forces in order to beat some other foe that cropped up in the movie. But I think we've set the stage for the film that we are going to review. So before we get stuck into Gamera versus Gyaos, let's listen to a little clip from the film.
It seems insoluble.
Gentlemen.
Aichi! Say! Gamera beat Gyaos, didn't he? Did you see it? How did he do it? Tell me what you saw.
Aichi, this is an important meeting. We don't belong here. Honorable gentlemen, accept our humble apologies.
This is the boy that rode on Gamera's back. They are friends. Gamera saved you from Gyaos, right? Take down everything he can tell you.
Yes, sir.
We humbly thank you.
Let's go.
Didn't you get dizzy flying around on his back, Aichi?
Oh, no. He flew straight all the time without making any spins, like he usually does.
No spins. That might just work.
The way to immobilize Gyaos is to make him so dizzy he can't move.
Dizzy?
Yes.
The fluid in the eustachian tube, or the inner ear, governs our equilibrium. If we spin around, we lose our balance. We become so dizzy we're unable to coordinate. We will lure Gyaos onto a round pedestal and whirl him till he's too dizzy to move. The problem is the pedestal.
Can we build a pedestal that will be big enough?
We don't have time to build one.
There's one right up there. Look!
Gamera vs. Gyaos sees our giant turtle kaiju battle a new adversary, Gyaos, a winged, bloodthirsty creature awakened by volcanic activity. The story begins with a series of earthquakes and eruptions near Mount Fuji which attract Gamera to the scene. Meanwhile, a research team investigating the phenomenon is wiped out by a mysterious supersonic ray. A young boy named Aichi, along with a reporter, stumbles upon the source, a giant bat-like monster called Gyaos, who quickly begins to terrorize Japan. As scientists and the military struggle to find a way to defeat Gyaos, it falls to Gamera, with a little help from Aichi, to destroy the monster. The director for this was Noriyaku Yuasa. He was a mainstay of the Gamera series, directing 7 of the 8 Showa-era films that came out between 1965 and 1980. The character then lay dormant until a reboot in 1995 and a further 3 films being released over the next 4 years, and then there was another period of hibernation until a second reboot in 2006 when Gamera the Brave was released. And as of this date, that's the prehistoric turtle's last appearance. Going back to Gamera vs. Gyaos, as I'm not familiar with Japanese actors of this period, it's hard to pull anyone out in the cast. But instead, let's mention Teru Aragaki, who played Gamera in the first of the 4 Showa-era films. Gamera vs. Gyaos has a 5.1 user rating on IMDb and a 3.1 out of 5 user rating on Letterboxd. So, with all of that out of the way, Fred, what did you make of Gamera vs. Gyaos?
Well, I gotta be honest with you, Will. I watched this movie twice this week. And I have a very, very difficult time remembering any of it, to be honest. And just before we started to record this, I sat down on YouTube to just look at, reviews and highlights and clips and trailers, just to boost my memory. So I need to be honest about this. With that said, I found it entertaining. I did. It might not. It doesn't come up to the same quality as Gamera versus Baragon, which I really consider a really, really good kaiju movie. Much because it's quite adult. This one is very, very childish, which is not surprising, of course, when it comes to Gamera. But I like it. I really dig the monster in its stiffy. Can I say stiffy? I mean, it's stiff in its stiff splendor. I'm sorry.
Well, it's very interesting what you say. About this film as opposed to the one that came before it, because I think Gamera versus Baragon, they kind of got rid of the sort of original director because they wanted to turn it into an A-list production, and so they wanted I think they wanted a director with more renown to helm it, and I think that what lies behind the quality of that film, because the first film being so successful, they put a lot more money into it. But it seems that that didn't take, and they then returned to their original director, and there's a bit of a subsequent sort of, they go back to the sort of the B-movie budget and attitude towards this film, and it gives them a bit more of a, as you were saying, that film's very much a sort of serious one, whereas this one, it really leans into the children here, and I think that marked a bit of a turning point, really, as the sort of producers leant in towards being sort of a more children's focused. And in this film, like Aichi he's pretty much the central character in this film, and he's the one that kind of comes up with all the important ideas to fight Gyaos. So what are your thoughts on the evolution of the series?
I'm afraid I'm one of those who actually deeply dislikes the kids in these movies, and I mean, you can't comprehend how much I dislike the kids in Gamera movies, and I would say that Ichi, this boy, is probably among one of the worst, with his chubby little face and his annoying voice. And why do you even have militaries? Why do you have science and militaries when you just can throw this little boy into the scene and he will solve every problem for you? And here's one thing also, I'm not sure if it's so evident in this movie, but I'd say in many Gamera movies, or even in many kaiju movies where they have annoying kids in, it's actually the kids that's causing the disasters, because they find the monster, they somehow annoys it, and it wakes up and it destroys cities and kills millions of people. But no one puts the responsibility on the kid. Never.
He's got a lot to answer for, this young lad.
Yeah.
Here. I mean, I do agree with you. I probably don't feel as strongly about him as you do. There's clearly a very deep passion or deep hatred towards this younger. But I do agree with you. He's so innocent, and he's kind of laughable as a character. I mean, has a sort of experience very very early on the film that would, I think, terrify any normal young child. Yet he just sort of absorbs it all instantly, and is quite happy to then sort of go on and have further encounters with, these giant monsters. And as you say, that little cherubic face and irritating voice. I mean, it's. I just let it wash over me, but I can well understand your passionate dislike of that character.
Yeah, I'm we should all, children are great and they're our future and everything like that. But there is something with these Japanese kids. I don't find Japanese kids scary, like in, the horror movies or anything like that. But there's something evil about them. You can't trust these little sacks of lard. You really can't do that. It's you there it's very very difficult for me to put it in words actually. But obviously the Japanese filmmakers obviously seems to like this, as you put it, this angelic faces.
There
let's
you
say
go.
like that. Yeah. For some reason, and I'm not sure why. Is that something that all adults do? Yeah, maybe, because when I see a baby and they have this chubby, cheeks, I want to squeeze them too. So maybe it's something deep in our DNA. We want these kind of creatures in our lives, but I don't think we should involve them in fighting monsters. That's basically my take on it.
But I did admire the commitment and sincerity of this film towards embracing its sort of child hero here. And I think that is something to be commended, as irritating as that little boy is frequently. I think that I was able to overlook it because of that commitment, that sort of wholehearted, innocent view of like, yes, we're going to make this little boy the hero of the movie. And I mean, I thought it was quite interesting that he's generally listened to in a way which is a little bit unusual. I think if you're watching, you see kids being made heroes in lots of other films, and I don't know if this was an American movie, I think there'd be a scene where some parent or older person is patronizing them, or there are like adults who are just like, oh, get this kid out of the room, I'm not listening to, he's got nothing value, he's a child, he's got nothing valuable to say. But there's frequent scenes within this film where little Aichi is in some, big room full of officials and generals, and he's able to have his say, and everyone just sort of politely listens. I mean, it's a good job that they do, but I kind of appreciated the sort of like, yeah, we're going to take this character seriously.
I might be exaggerating my hate to this kid a little bit, but I totally understand you, and I find it very respectful, because after all, this is a children's movie. This is a movie aimed to families and children more than adults, and they need some kind of role model, some kind of character to follow through this adventure. So if I'm looking at it objectively, which I often have a hard time doing, I fully hear you and I understand you, and I think that's something many other movies are missing. Of course, there is something powerful with giving the respect to characters like this, to children like this in movies, which you rarely see actually, except from in the Kaiju movies out there. So yeah, you see, I can be a bit soft too when it comes to this issue, but because I felt that was a bit harsh before, but it's just a kids' movie.
Yeah, calling Aichi an evil sack of lard was quite strong. Quite strong.
It was. I'm really sorry if this actor is listening to this. I'm so sorry. I really would like to come back to Japan one day, and I don't want to get thrown out.
But having sort of said that this is a very children's focused film, does have some surprisingly sort of dark moments in it, and there's a moment where we see Gamera and Gyaos battling each other, and Gamera's got like hold of Gyaos's toes, and in order to escape, Gyaos has to use his supersonic rays to slice off his own foot, and I just thought that's quite a violent sort of detail to include in a kids' family film. So there were some surprisingly sort of darker moments. I mean, I guess 60 years ago we had sort of different attitudes towards what what we should be protecting children from.
Yeah, I mean, then you have the sequence where the arm of Gamera is sliced by this laser beam, and the blood is pulsating out. It's like a waterfall coming out, and which is quite it's quite graphic. I mean, it's not red blood or anything like that, which of course removes some of the effect of it. And then you have several sequences where Gyaos is eating people, grabbing them and chewing them. You don't see any graphic details, of course, but still, that's something that I like that with some Kaiju movies, because you could see where stuff like that basically disappeared from these kind of movies. Definitely, when they suddenly turned very, very kid friendly. But here it's a family movie, and you see this happening. You see people get killed, because of course when giant monsters are attacking cities, there must be millions millions of deaths basically. And I think that's very fair. I mean, the original Godzilla is a take on the atomic bomb and Hiroshima and Nagasaki and everything like that. So I like that. I like when the darkness comes, when it arrives, and you realize that this is serious business. This is a disaster basically. Overall, I think Gyaos is a quite dark monster. In general, it's some kind of vampire, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's sort of like a cross. Seems to be like a cross between a vampire and a pterodactyl, sort of prehistoric bird. It's and it especially with that very sharp, angular face. I can well imagine, as a younger child watching that, and having. I mean, watching it today, I'm just entertained and amused. But if I was 6 or something watching this, I could well imagine having the odd nightmare about Gyaos.
Yeah, it's a stylish and very, very powerful monster design. Simple, definitely simple. But I often find in these movies that it's the simple designs that lasts the longest. I'd say, if you mix up too much tentacles and weird limbs, they're kind of just more messy and easy forgotten. But here you have, it's like Rodan in the Godzilla movies, or Godzilla himself, or Gamera. It's very, very simple monsters. They're not fancy really, at least on the visual side. Then they might have these weird powers and everything. So yeah, I agree. It's a good monster. It is a bit stiff.
Now we need to talk about the special effects and the miniatures in this film, because anyone who's heard you before in this podcast will know you're a massive fan of model work in movies. So what did you make of those special effects here?
Well, I often judge model work, miniatures, in how realistically they are destroyed. And because I mean the smaller pieces they're dissolved into the better model work there it is, of course. And often in the Gamera movies, they're kind of like a house is kind of just comes apart in like 3 or 4 parts, or like in this movie it's some kind of temple that's sliced in 2 halves, for example, which is kind of very, very lazy to me. There's very little, this dust and tiny details and miniature glass getting destroyed, or it's kind of feels cheap. But with that said, it's still model work, and they destroy it, they blow it apart. I like it. I think they handle it quite good, because there is a lot of action and there is a lot of destruction in this movie. But it, like in most other Gamera movie, it never comes up in the same quality as the Godzilla movies, I'd say. I'm not saying that all the Godzilla movies has great model works. There's some really, really bad stuff going on there too. But it's kind of on a lesser level of details, but in this one, for example, I do enjoy the sequence where Gyaos is attacking, I believe it's Nagoya, and you have some nice big wide shots of the town where he's walking around blowing things apart, and you know, crushing houses, and you have the wonderful train sequence where he kind of slices off the roof of the train, which I think it's a great scene. It's quite cool when he hovers over the train and the people are running from the train in the foreground. It's some good special effects there for what it is.
Oh, absolutely. I really enjoyed that particular section of the film. I thought that sort of the attack on the city, there's a good building that Gyaos rampages through, and then yes, as you say, the train attack. That's a great sequence, and I think it's really easy to overlook the skill that goes into putting together these types of scenes, and I really enjoyed rewatching this film, and the model work. I agree with you. Like, it's not it's certainly not the very best model work, but it's still very good. It's still a lot of skill on display as they, there's just matching, whatever real stuff they've got with the models that they're going to create the destruction to. I mean, there's a real skill and attention to detail that sort of goes into that, which, as I say, I think it's easy to overlook in this age of CGI, where now even just with putting some voice commands into an AI generator, you can create various videos. I mean, the level of skill required to do what you see in this film today is to be admired, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the Japanese tradition of using model works for basically everything, at least during this time. I mean, I was watching this movie together with my partner, and he mentioned, because he never seen a Gamera movie, and there was a couple of shots where they used miniatures
for no reason.
For no reason.
Yes.
It's just a car driving by or something like that. And he said, "Why do they do that?" And I said, "Well, sometimes they just plant the environment for an upcoming sequence, so you buy it easier. Sometimes I guess they just do it because it's fun. It's the craftsmanship, with it. They just do it. And it's like with Antonio Margheriti. He often did that. Not often, but he does it a lot, at least in his 80s movies. You have a car chase, for example, with miniatures. But I kind of like what my partner said when he was watching this, and he was looking at the quality of the model work and the little cars and everything. And he said that this is a children's movie, and the leading character is a child, a little boy, and the miniatures looks like toys. So it's basically like it's this boy's fantasy. He plays with his toys and with his monsters and car toys and everything, and creates this story like it's its own reality, its own little universe, a kid's fantasy, basically. And I like that way of looking at it.
Yeah, I like that too. Too. Well, let's talk about the monster fights in this movie. How did you enjoy the various brawls that we get between Gyaos and Gamera? How do you think their various abilities matched up here?
I do like Gyaos' brutal laser beams. I do, and I was watching a review on YouTube before we started, and there was a guy who mentioned that he had some kind of poisonous nipples also. He's spraying some gas or something like that, and that's cool. I think it's good fights. They are. I'm more kinda in the old-fashioned wrestling kinda monster fights, where they kind of wrestle around and roll over the hills and throw each other and stuff like that. Here there were a lot of Gamera spinning. He's doing his trademark move, spinning around, and you also had this it's not really logical, but Gyaos kind of picks up the obviously very talented Gamera and just flies around with him and kind of drops him like a bomb, But I agree, because Gamera can fly, so why didn't he just fly? Why didn't he just take off? Is he stuck underneath Gyaos somehow, or I'm not really sure what's going on there. I don't know if you see, Will, I'm rambling as usual. I did enjoy the fights. I do enjoy the fights, but I wish there was more wrestling, really.
Well, I think probably one of the reasons we don't get more wrestling is the reason that you alluded to earlier, which is that Gyaos is a peculiarly stiff creation, and I don't think his physical form sort of lends itself terribly well to wrestling in any way. So I think they had to get creative with what they've got, and I enjoyed Gaius's sort of various array of weaponry. So he's got the supersonic ray, he's got his poisonous nipples, which seem to allow him to put out flames. I don't quite know how important that attribute is, but he also then is able to sort of create like tornadoes or something by flapping his wings, and we see him skittling a whole load of tanks that have come to attack him just by creating some huge windstorm to blow them all away. Gamera's abilities in a fight are a little bit limited. I feel that I mean, he can sort of turn himself into a boulder, and we see him sort of roll down hills and just bang into Gyaos. I mean, obviously he's got the fire breathing, but in terms of, he's only got those little short, stubbly legs, and he's only got a little head, comparatively small head and mouth. So he's I don't know. He just feels always a bit under equipped into any fight he goes into.
Oh yeah, absolutely, I agree. And I'm always worried when Gamera blows fire, because there's always a close up of his mouth, and the fire it's like fire saliva. It kind of drips. And it feels very, very dangerous. Like he don't have control over the fire. It's like it's out of control. It looks very dangerous, I think. There was something I was going to mention here about the fights. Well, we need to just discuss shortly, at least, the way the fights are staged, in what kind of environments. Here, I'm a bit old-fashioned. I preferred my monster fights in cities, or at least with buildings around. But here, they do it the sheep way, which you can see this in the Godzilla movies too. So they put the fights in these big, anonymous, generic landscapes with some mountains in the backgrounds and some forests. There's nothing really to be destroyed. Except nature, and I find that a bit boring. I want the monsters to be able to throw each other into houses, or stomp through bridges, or fall into bridges. They love doing that. But here you just have this landscape. I don't know how to describe it. It's just a landscape. It's like if you ask ChatGPT to produce a landscape, this will be it. Something generic, something anonymous.
Well, that's why you can't describe it, because there's not really anything to describe. It's just some ground with a mountain in the background. I mean, that's just about
some
it.
Ground. So, but I understand. I mean, it's a question of budget, of course. They can't destroy skyscrapers, all the time. But it kind of lacks you kind of misses out how big they are, I would say, because you want to see how big they are, and if there's nothing to compare them with during the fights, they kind of just looks like two dudes, having a shuffle outside the bar or something like that,
Okay. Well, before we finish this section, I have to ask, what did you make of Gamera's song, which closes out the movie, delightfully sung by the Hibari Children's Choir?
Oh, it's horrible. It feels like feels like a North Korean, propaganda song. Like they bring out the children's choir when they have foreign visitors or something, and they sing about the greatness of North Korea. That's the vibe I get from it, really. But I mean, it's not the first time children's choirs has been used in kaiju movies, of course. But there is something truly horrible about it. It's something. No, I don't like it. I do not like it. I can accept the kid. I can be softer on the kid, but the choir, no, nada, zero.
It's a monstrosity, Fred. I think I'm in complete agreement. Okay, I think it's time to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the exploding helicopter action.
A virus so deadly,
approaching target, weapons going hot.
so contagious, it cannot be stopped.
It's out. We have our first hot zone.
A brilliant scientist has the only cure.
He's still alive.
The most dangerous criminal in the world
His name is Niles Spencer. He's the new face of modern terror.
now controls both.
She comes with us. Kill him.
Task force is being assembled now. They'll find you.
This is the hostage. She is the mission.
The fate of mankind
Oh my God.
hangs in the balance.
Let's go.
I'm suggesting a contingency plan.
Launch the attack.
Targeting range. Impact in T-minus 30 seconds.
Major Namick, Arnold Boslow, Global Effect.
We're back, and now we're looking at the exploding helicopter action. This occurs very early in the film after a team of scientists are dispatched in a Chinook helicopter to investigate the unusual volcanic activity. They notice a green glow coming from the Earth where Gyaos is hiding. The aircraft comes under fire from yellow supersonic ray fired by Gyaos. The first few shots miss, but then one slices through the helicopter, cutting it neatly in two. We see a few passengers plummet to their death before the Chinook blows up in a very brief explosion. Fred, what did you make of the exploding helicopter action?
Well, there's one thing that annoys me. I mean, it's super cool that the supersonic ray, or laser beam as I call it, slices through it and cuts it apart. That's very, very cool. But when you see some of these geologists inside fall to the death, it's kind of annoys me that you see one of them, he kind of deliberately jumps. He's kind of standing on the edge and he looks down and he feels, wow, there's several hundred meters and I can just jump from here, and kind of jumps. That little detail annoys me very, very much, because didn't they have a stuntman? They had just some kind of poor extra that had to make a jump. I'm not sure. I would say that the concept is very, very cool. It's a good idea, but the helicopter itself is kind of stiff when it breaks apart, and the explosion itself is very, very short, very brief. I would like to have seen a fireball fall down from the sky and crash into some farm or a bridge or something like that. That's me.
Yeah, no, they really needed an additional shot, and one like you just described would have been absolutely perfect and really would have capped this scene off. I didn't notice the particularly poor way that man fell to his death. I didn't. I missed that particular piece of staging. Maybe I'll go back and have another look. But I did enjoy. I always enjoy people falling to their deaths from helicopters.
Don't we all?
It's the first time I've admitted that in public. I mean, I think we both did When Time Ran Out, and before the helicopter explodes. There's lots of people hanging off the edge of that helicopter, and then they can't hang on any longer. They plummet down to the ground. That's a good, adds to the sort of the panic and the selfishness of the people in that moment. I enjoyed that. I do agree with you. I mean, for me to include this on our list of films with an exploding helicopter, it's a very marginal one, because that explosion, is very, very brief, and it would have been better if it was a more categoric explosion. We actually see this helicopter consumed, but I think on balance, I'm minded to include it. There is something very notable to mention about this sequence, though, Freddie. I mean, you've witnessed some film history here, because this is the first Chinook helicopter to be blown up in a movie. So, the Gamera versus Gyaos has that piece of history to its name. There is a certain aerodynamic unreality to this sequence, where after it gets chopped in two by the laser beam, the sort of the two halves of the helicopter kind of remain sort of suspended in the sky. Now, yes. I mean, you could be generous and sort of say, well, they've both got a rotor blade above them, so that could be keeping them up. But I'm not sure that aerodynamics work quite like that. But you know what? For the flaws that this scene does have, I think there's enough here to enjoy, and I enjoyed my exploding helicopter here, and I particularly enjoyed, as I'm sure you did, we see the helicopter taking off a little bit earlier, and it's obviously a model, but a beautifully created model that we get to see take to the skies, and I enjoyed that little detail as well.
Yeah, I agree, and because we're discussing this very, very important scene, I'd say it's actually a quite traumatic scene to include in a children's movie. Very much so. I think it's probably the most traumatic scene in the whole movie, because you for a couple of seconds you get to know these geologists inside the helicopters, and they're enthusiastic, and they're looking down with their cameras and binoculars, and you manages to get some kind of relationship with them. And then it slices into the helicopters and they fall out. So maybe by including a huge explosion and the carcass of the helicopter crashing into a building, maybe that would be too much for a children's movie. Now you see just the start of it and a quick, brief explosion, and maybe that's just enough. Then again, we all know that Japanese kids are way more extreme than us, us in Europe, for example. They probably can handle a lot more. But I kind of feel it would have been even more traumatic and gruesome if they have made it a longer scene. So yeah, I understand the choices they made, but I still wish there was more gruesomeness, more gore. No, but more explosions at least.
Always more explosions, Fred. I think that's words that any filmmaker should live by. But I think that just about wraps things up for this show. Fred, thanks for joining me once again. It's been a pleasure as always. Before you go, is there anything you'd like to plug? Is there anything that you'd like to direct people towards online?
Well, I'm mostly active on Blue Sky nowadays. With the username Homo Satanis, where I post about movies and weirdness and UFOs and the usual stuff. You can still find me on Instagram with the same username, of course. But I'm trying to keep my business at Blue Sky and just have everything fun there. Outside of that, I don't know if I have so much to share. I'm doing my work here in Sweden with interesting television projects that never will be seen outside the Swedish borders, which is a pity, and I'm kind of bitter about that. But, at least it puts bread on the table.
There you go. As always, don't forget to check out the Exploding Helicopter website for more information, reviews of films where helicopters explode. You can follow us on social media. We are on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and Letterboxd. We'll be back soon, but until then, what should people do, Fred?
Keep watching the skies for those exploding helicopters.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.